My name's Larry Otterback, and we are now in session. We've got 4 cases before us today. The procedures for all 4 cases will be the same. Here in a minute, I'm going to swear staff in. Gretchen is going to read the case. Staff is going to come forward to the podium and give us a staff report. There'll be a round of questioning by board members to staff. When we're done with that, staff's going to take a seat, and I will call the applicant forward. Everybody who's speaking, make sure you come forward. Make sure you speak into the, at the lectern, into the mic. Things are being recorded and video, so make sure you're up here in the mic when you speak. But the applicant will come forward, raise your right hand, get sworn in, state your name and address, and justify your project. There'll be a round of questioning by us, the board, to the applicant. When we're done, the applicant may take a seat. I'm going to call forward anybody that wishes to speak in opposition to the application. Same thing, come forward, raise your right hand, state your name and address, make sure you're at the lectern and speaking into the mic, and tell us why you're in opposition to the application. There might be a round of questioning by board to you. When we're done, you may take a seat, and then we'll do any rebuttals. You'll have 5 minutes for rebuttals. But we'll start with the applicant. If there's opposition, we'll start with the applicant for a rebuttal, then the opposition will come forward for the rebuttal. Final statements, I'll close the floor, open up for discussion among the board members, and call for an up and down vote. Okay. Phones, please make sure your phones are off or on silent. If you need to use them, just excuse yourself from the court. Make sure it's off when you come back in. Board members, make sure your mics are on. And with that, let's swear staff in.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Gretchen, you want to read the first one?
OC 24-042, an application has been filed for a revision of a previously issued conditional use permit, OC 24-017, for a contractor equipment storage at property located at 4727 Highway 146 in Buckner.
Okay, Ryan.
All right. Good morning. Ryan Fisher, Senior Planner with Oldham County Planning and Development. So as Ms. Chitwood stated, this is for a revision of a previously issued conditional use permit, one you just heard back in April, so maybe it'll be fresh in your minds. This is on property that is zoned C4 and sits on 0.94 acres of land. So on April 18th, you all approved a conditional use permit, which was OC 24-017 for 2 contractor storage buildings that were going to be located behind an existing 4727 Highway 146 there in Buckner, which is a bank directly next to the Thorntons there as you get close to the interstate. That motion was passed on a vote of 4-0. So as far as this case history, for the revision, we did post this to the website at the end of July, sent out our adjoining property owner notices on the 1st of August, and it was posted in the Oldham Era on the 8th of August. And so here's the parcel in question, directly next to the Thorntons, Fox Run Road. Existing bank sits here, and we're going to be looking at the parcel here behind that for these contractor storage buildings. The zoning map showing it is located in C4 commercial zoning. And once again, this is the area of the property that we're looking at for those contractor storage buildings. So the applicant is still proposing those 2 contractor equipment storage buildings on that vacant tract of land behind the existing bank. Once again, property is zoned C4. And that requires them to ask for that conditional use permit for the contractor equipment storage. So one of the conditions of approval, as always in all of our hearings, but from that April 18th approval, was that the plans only apply to the approval shall only apply to the plans that were issued at that particular day's meeting. And so in doing so, they have a contractor that needs a certain amount of feet in the building to put in there. And so they've changed their dimensions of the building, which is requiring them to come back here today. So the original proposed development proposed a 5,400 square foot building and a 9,600 square foot building that was going to be used as office, warehouse, or storage space. This was the original approved set of plans that you all approved back in April, showing the 5,400 square foot building over here on your left and the larger 9,600 square foot building over here on your right. So the applicant has requested a plan change with the proposed development now going to be including a 104 by 60 foot, so a 6,240 square foot building, and a 190 by 50 foot building, a 9,500 square foot building. No other changes to that previously approved plan. And so I'll kind of go through this here a little bit to kind of give you visual representation of these changes. So these are the plans that have been presented for approval today, which were included in your staff packet. And then I'm just going to do a side-by-side comparison for you to look at the old plans and the new plans side by side. So the first one, old plans on the left show that 5,400 square foot building that you all approved in April. The new building will now be a 60-foot depth building, which they need for a specific contractor size. And so that will be a 6,240 square foot building instead of the 5,400 square foot. Were you good there, Larry? Okay. Yeah. And then on the second building, the old plan showed a 9,600 square foot building, 192 by 50. That new building will now be 9,500 square feet, 190 by 50 feet. So those are really the two changes that they're proposing to you, is just some changes to that dimension, and simply here today because the approval only applied to the plans that were presented at your all's April meeting. Same pictures that I used back in April, I'll just show you again. The existing bank, a couple of shots down 146. And then the area of land there in the back where we're looking at that contractor equipment storage. And looking down towards Fox Run Road to the rear of Thornton's. So in summary, the applicant's requesting a revision to that previously issued April conditional use permit for that contractor equipment storage. Same potential conditions of approval really apply to this one as it did back in April. The conditional use permit shall only apply to the application considered now today here at this August 15th, 2024 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing. A minor plat application and survey must be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to the issuance of any building permits. And there will have to be that shared road maintenance agreement along with that minor plat for that access that'll be coming in from the bank property. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Questions?
Yes. Is there a shared road usage thing that has come in yet?
So there will be, if you look at this plat I just pulled up, you see that proposed access easement that'll go in from the bank. I think the applicant can probably let you know the owner that owns both of these property, he owns the entire tract with the bank on it and the existing tract behind. But they did file this minor plat. The surveyor did, but then they've said hold up on it until we figure out what happens with this. So they had brought in a minor plat for approval, but then kind of put the brakes on it pending the changes in the plans that are here before you today.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
And if we can have the applicant come forward. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Valerie Shannon from Bramall Law on behalf of Buckner Holdings LLC. I am here with the applicant, Mr. Ron Funk, and Buckner Holdings LLC representative. And to answer your question, Mr. Turner, my office is working with the bank, which is United Citizens Bank, on the specific details of that road maintenance agreement, and we've begun sharing drafts back and forth about how the costs and expenses will be shared. It is a binding element in their lease to allow a shared easement and as part of their lease of the property. So it's not quite finished yet, but we're very close to having that complete. We're trying to decide, who's going to pay what percentage of paving and reconstruction after this development is built. So just to go back to the change that we're trying to make, as they've begun marketing the project, they've discovered that there are at least one contractor and possibly others that would require a little bit more pull-in space to the 60-foot depth. And they really are desirous of being able to offer a different product. They have not changed the impervious surface of the project in any way, shape, or form. They've swapped out a couple feet on the long and narrow building, and then they're just going to broaden out by 10 feet the shorter and wider building. So that's their request for a change in the application. And I'll let Mr. Funk add anything that he would like to add to this.
I'm just prepared to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, guys. Questions?
Yes. What kind of equipment is be stored there?
Well, that's a speculative building, sir, and so therefore, it could be, as it was stated in the application, contractor. We could have a tree company that has a trailer, potentially with a stump grinder on it. Could be a plumbing company that has a trailer with inventory in their trailer. So we just have the space available to pull equipment and trailer inside the structure. And then we also have a man door capacity so that a contractor or small business could go and build a small office space as well.
I see you got 18 foot between the buildings. That's going to be an awful small space to get in and turn to get it back into the doors.
I'm sorry, I'm having a very difficult time.
You got an
hearing you.
18 foot distance between the two buildings, if I'm reading the print right.
I think he's concerned about them being able to pull in and
Yeah,
pull out.
18 foot's a pretty short distance to get a truck in, turn it, and back into a building.
I agree with that comment. However, I did have our engineer, and I'm not qualified to speak as an engineer, do the calculations on that. If you do look from our first proposal, the reference to old plan to new plan, if you look towards the rear where the dotted lines depicted for the stormwater detention, we did modify the detention size in an effort to accommodate the parking and turnaround from the first plan to the second plan. And our engineer, we had spoke about the parking and turnaround capacity, and a minor adjustment has been made to that point.
Jay, could you put that on our screens, please?
The screen's up now, Mr. Otterback.
It's not on here. It's-
Oh, I'm sorry. I can see it on the page.
I know it's up there, but not here.
There you go.
All right. All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you, guys. Take a seat.
Thank you.
All right, is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody here wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Okay, any final statements, final words? Okay, board members, questions for anybody?
No.
Okay, I'll close the floor, open it up for discussion.
I think this is just a small technicality to increase the size of the building to better serve its purpose. I don't think there's anything too outrageous about it.
I agree.
18 foot still seems short to me, but as long as they've decided it will work, that's fine.
I agree. Okay, I'm ready for a motion.
All right. Motion to approve OC 24-042 for a revision of a previously issued conditional use permit. OC 24-017 for a contractor equipment storage at a property located at 4727 Highway 146 in Buckner. The character and objectives of the proposed use and the potential impact on the community and its surroundings are appropriate. The conditions of approval are as followed. The conditional use permit shall only apply to the application considered at the August 15th, 2024 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing. A minor plat application and survey must be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to the issuance of any building permits. A shared road maintenance agreement shall be prepared and agreed upon by all parties affected and recorded with the minor plat. And that is my motion.
Thank you, Gretchen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? It's been approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, staff and board.
All right, Gretchen, you want to read the next one, please?
OC 24-043, an application has been filed requesting a conditional use for a detached accessory dwelling unit, as well as a location and maximum square footage variance in an existing modified barn on property located at 3723 East Highway 24 in Pendleton.
All right, Ryan Fisher, Senior Planner with Oldham County Planning. So this is for a detached accessory dwelling unit, and that accessory dwelling unit will actually be for an existing modified barn that's on the property, as well as a location variance for that once the primary dwelling is built, and a maximum square footage variance. So there'll be 3 separate votes here for you all to look at. And this is located at 3723 East Highway 42 in Pendleton. Sits on a piece of land that has 2 different zonings, CO1 and conservation and agricultural zoning. Although I'm fairly certain, if I can remember, that this is mostly in that conservation zoning piece of property. It sits on 17.32 acres of land. So a little bit of site history here if we go back, because this piece of property, we do have to touch on these before we get into what they're looking at today. So on June 30th, 2003, a building permit was issued, and I've listed the building permit number there of 13472, was applied for by Bluegrass Garage Builders, and was issued for an accessory building and a horse barn on the property. There's a note in the file that on October 17th, 2003, the barn rough-in was not ready for inspection. The case file is locked because it's in our old system of records, but there's no evidence that any other inspections were completed on that particular barn. On October 16th, 2003, a building remodel permit was applied for by Heritage Home Builders and was issued for a remodel that included putting a lounge and offices inside the barn. There's a note on that permit that a rough framing inspection was completed on October 31st of that year, but there's no other note regarding any further inspections to that as well. Now, currently, the PVA lists the property, and I've included this in your staff packet, as currently having a 1-story wood frame barn with living quarters that includes, according to the PVA, 1,600 square feet of living space, which includes 2 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, and a 2-vehicle attached garage. And vehicle is spelled wrong there. Sorry about that. A 2-vehicle attached garage. So I have included this in your packet just to show that PVA information on what the current barn with living quarters is listed as. So as far as this case history goes, and this case history is a little bit more extensive with this. We met with the particular builder who's going to build on this property and talked to him several different times about options for them to be able to do on this. So just the case history, though, involving what we're here for today, we did post this to the website at the end of July. Joining property owner notices were mailed out August 1st, and the public notice appeared in the Oldham Era on the 8th. So this is the piece of property in question on East Highway 42. So the existing residence, the barn with living quarters, is right here. And there's several other barns on that property and outbuildings on that 17 acres of land. So I was right. Most of it is in the CO1 conservation zoning area, but you can see the part of AG1 on that property as well. So the applicant's requesting a conditional use permit to allow that existing horse barn to be considered the accessory dwelling unit as they plan to build a primary home on the property. And so that existing structure would then be located in front, so they're asking for a location variance for that, and then it will also be over that size requirement of the 25%, so they're asking for a maximum square footage variance as well. And we'll get into all of these a little bit more in depth as we go. So the applicant is proposing to build a 2,720 square foot single-story primary residence on the property. Now, there is an additional 2,720 square feet in the basement, and I'll show you here on the plan in a second. But this is the first floor set of plans, and these were provided in your staff packet as well. The basement plans they have provided at this time show an unfinished basement. So typically, in all of our other cases that deal with this, when I give you all the plans, we just look at finished space and calculating that 25%. I know there's been talks that we've had on the phone that the homeowner intends to finish that basement portion. And you'll see, I'll go through that when we get to that part that shows if they finish that basement, the amount of square footage that it gives them and what that does on the percentage. But the plans that they provided today show a finished first floor and an unfinished basement. So 2,720 square foot single-story home is what we're really looking at today. And then a couple of elevation drawings that I believe were also included in your staff packet as well of the proposed primary house. The property has that existing 1,600 square foot ADU and barn with that living space on that property that they plan to continue to use as living space. And this is a picture from the PVA website taken in 2013. I'm not sure if it still looks like this or not, but this is what's on the PVA website showing what that appears to be, that barn with living space. And then once again, just the PVA info showing the 1,600 square feet of living space. So the other issue that we've had on this property is currently there's no addresses available for both the primary residence and the existing ADU. And so typically when we do these, the ADU will have an address provided to it as well as the primary residence. And that's for a host of different reasons, public safety being one, making sure emergency services goes to the correct house if there's an emergency. So currently, and you'll see here on this map, there's not addresses available. So when they'd originally come in to look at some options of splitting this into a separate tract, because they do have the acreage that would allow for them to do a split off of land, there was a few problems that we ran into. One of both of these homes here, as well as the third, provide access off of this access easement. And so as you all know, we deal with a lot that you can only have 3 parcels off of an access easement. So had they have gone then with a fourth and created a new lot, they would have had to go for a waiver from the Planning Commission. The other problem we ran into was the lack of addresses. And so you can see here on our GIS map, if we start down here, we've got 3715 East Highway 42, and most of the time when addressing is done, the odd numbers are on one side of the road, the even numbers are on the opposite side of the road. And so you've got 3715, 3717, and then going up this access easement is 19, 21, 23, and then the very next house is 3725. Now, after that, there is some gaps between where there could possibly be numbers, but it would require a lot of people to get their addresses changed in this process. So we also had a little bit of an addressing issue on this property. And so in doing some talks, and Mr. Urban is here today if he wants to talk about this any further, but so there's been an agreement with the office and the applicant that the address of the existing ADU will be changed to 3723 and a half. And that would be effective immediately and would be clearly visible on the barn. And in the rear of your staff packet, there's an agreement letter. The one that I provided to you is not a signed copy, but I believe the applicants and their representatives have signed that copy. So that has to be clearly visible on the barn of that address. Upon receiving a building permit for the proposed single-family residence, the address of 3723 would then be issued for that new residence. So on that property, there would be a 3723 and a 3723 and a half. Okay, at the time the adjoining property owner, and they've had talks with this adjoining property owner at 3725, which is the one just north of the property, about potentially changing their address. And at the time that person doesn't want to change their address. But at the time that owner sells, which is a good time if you're going to change an address to do so at that moment, they have agreed that person will change their address and then they will revert back to the numbers that are allowed at that point. So the Oldham County GIS manager will issue a higher numbered address for 3725. The barn will then be issued a new number, and all the numbers will be in place. Crystal clear, right? So getting into the detached accessory dwelling unit. Section 250-040E, number 1, states that those detached accessory dwelling units shall only be allowed after the approval of a conditional use permit. So that's what we're here for today. The first thing being the conditional use permit for that ADU. That same regulation also talks about accessory dwelling units shall not be located in front of the primary structure. So the applicant's requesting that location variance to allow the existing accessory dwelling unit, that modified barn, to be in front of the primary structure. So the plat that was provided us showing the location of the proposed house is shown here, and about the approximate location of the existing barn with ADU is about right in this general area where the green circle is. So as you can see, that would be in front of the proposed primary house, so asking for a location variance for that. And then we get into the 25% rule that I know you all have dealt with several times on cases, but the detached accessory dwelling unit shall not be greater than 25% of the primary structure's square footage. So the proposed primary home, and once again, this goes back to those plans that were provided to us, show a 2,720 square foot first floor and an unfinished basement. So that would allow a maximum of 680 square feet of ADU area. So that existing accessory dwelling unit is, according to the PVA, 1,600 square feet. So currently, we're looking at a maximum square footage variance request of 920 square feet. Now you can talk to the applicant about the basement and what that would provide, because if the 2,720 square foot basement area is finished, that would make that total square footage of the primary home now 5,440 square feet, which would allow an allowable ADU area of 1,360 square feet. So that would obviously take down the amount of request for the ADU and the maximum square footage. But going off the plans that were provided, that's why I'm going with the first set of numbers that I told you. As far as the remaining regulations that are listed in that section 250-040, they meet those remaining regulations. So 3 separate motions, the conditional use permit and 2 variances that they're asking for. The first one there, the conditional use permit, the applicant's requesting that conditional use permit for really the construction of the primary home, which would then make the existing home be the detached accessory dwelling unit. So we're not really constructing a new detached accessory dwelling unit. It's the existing one that's on the property. And then the location variance for the detached accessory dwelling unit and the maximum square footage variance to allow the construction of the new home to make the existing ADU greater than the 25%. So the potential conditions of approval for that location and the maximum square footage variance are that it shall only apply to the plans considered at that August 15th, 2024 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing. And then on the conditional use permit, we'd also like to see something in there about language ensuring that the affidavit is signed and that when that 3725 comes available, that address change will occur at that moment. And I believe that's listed in your staff packet. I think that's it for my presentation.
Hey, Ryan, let me ask you a question. Is this the one we talked about a few weeks ago about the address?
Probably, yes.
Okay, thank
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan?
If the bottom level is finished at some point, there's still going to be somewhat of a shortfall. It's just going to be a smaller
That's right.
percentage
Correct.
of the shortfall for the square footage. Okay.
What constitutes finished?
I'll let the builder answer that when they come up. Yeah, I mean, building code dictates that it's finished. drywall, you know, it would be like an unfinished basement with just exposed studs, not finished, an unfinished garage.
Just so I don't yell at the back of his head, it's space that could be habitable in the building code.
So there's no
So
rules
it-
about windows or,
Well, that would have to be part of the building code, so it could involve sleeping space, kitchens, place for sanitary, bathroom. So that's all in the building code
okay.
as finished. If it was just drywall on the walls, but there was no bedrooms or kitchen or bathroom, it's still finished space, but it's not necessarily classified as habitable, right?
Okay, any other questions? I've got a couple. In '03, when the building permit was issued for the current structure there, were there any conditions of approval at that time?
No, not on the building permit, no.
Not on the building permit, but they would have had to have had,
I don't know what the regulation said in '03, that if it required them to go for a conditional use permit on that. I didn't find any evidence that there was ever a conditional use permit or anything like that. There were several barns and outbuildings, and of course, they're over 5 acres, which, allows the agricultural use and barns. But I didn't find any evidence that there was ever a conditional use permit. But then again, I don't know what the zoning regs were in '03 to whether or not that was even something that was required. I don't know if you have an answer to that. And I will say those building permits that were in '03, the applicants that are before you today did not live there then. So this was not anything that they did. It was previous builders, previous owners of that property.
okay. We also have a regulation for, can't have an accessory structure prior to a primary structure. How does that come into play with this? I know the existing structure is there, so that's kind of grandfathered, so that doesn't apply to what's before us today. Yeah, okay. It just seems like there's another CUP that needs to belong to this application today.
Well, so you can't have an accessory structure without a primary. Of course, they're on over 5 acres, so there's a lot of farmland that has
Right.
barns without living space on them.
This is,
Not- Not knowing what those regulations were in '03, though, I can't. Today, yes, if they were to come in and ask for a barn to be constructed prior to a primary, we'd be here today asking for that. But
I think you'll hear from the applicant that they're itching to pull a building permit for the primary structure. If you're uncomfortable with that, you can always say it should be, a building permit should be pulled within 30 days or something, but I know they're ready to go, but just ask them that question. I think they'll confirm that.
Yeah. All right. All right. Any other questions for Ryan? Thanks, Jim. Okay, thanks, Ryan. If we can have the applicant come forward.
okay.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Combs, Ms. Edgar, good morning. Mike Swansburg, Swansburg and Smith, 117 West Main Street here in LaGrange, and I have the honor and privilege of representing the Jenkins family, who are the applicants in this case. I do have a presentation that I want to make to you all. My hope is that we can kind of walk through the requests that we've got here. I know there's a lot of moving pieces on this, but my hope is if we walk through it again, that we'll be able to address any concerns or questions that anybody might have about that. So again, the applicant in this case is Mrs. Donna Jenkins, and her family is also here with her. For benefit of everybody else, I may also have Billy Ducker, who is the developer, testify. So, Mr. Chairman, we probably need to have him sworn in at this
Okay,
point.
let's go ahead and do that if you want to go ahead and get sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know that the family's not, my intent is not for the family necessarily to make any comments, but to the extent that you all have anything that you might want to be able to say, let's go ahead and have you sworn in just in case.
All right, very good.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, so again, we're here requesting, and here's my initial pitch. What's the ask, as I like to call it, every time I make a presentation. And then consistent with the Oldham County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, Mrs. Jenkins and her family are respectfully asking this body to grant her a conditional use permit for a detached accessory dwelling unit, or an ADU, which I'll refer to throughout the rest of this, and to grant 2 variances related to the size of the ADU and its location as compared to a proposed primary residence that they expect to build, or hope to build, I should say, on the property. And a lot of what I'm going to cover has already been covered by Mr. Fisher, who always does a great job of that. But I do think it's important for us to go back and talk about some of these issues so that we get a clearer understanding of what's going on. Again, the property is located presently at 3723 East Highway 42 in the Pendleton area of Oldham County. As Mr. Fisher already indicated, the property consists of 17.3 acres, presently zoned both CO1 and Ag1. The primary, the structures are all contained within CO1. Ag1 is essentially the entranceway, for lack of better description. But they are both within the overall property lines. Both of these designations are permit ADUs as a conditional use of a parcel of property. And then I've cited the respective zoning section, or the zoning ordinance sections for that purpose. So whether it's CO1 or AG1, both of them allow accessory dwelling units as a conditional use, which is why we're here today. So again, as the lawyer, I always like to talk about what are the governing standards for anybody that might be looking at an issue like this. Of course, Section 250-040 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance governs ADUs within Oldham County. And then an ADU is defined for everyone's benefit as a living unit located on a residential lot with a primary unit or structure subordinate in scale and use to the primary unit structure. So again, the idea behind an ADU is that it essentially is when I say subordinate in scale, the way I interpret that is to be smaller in scale, right? It's not going to be grander than your primary residence in some way. It's going to be secondary to that. You will have a primary residence on the property as well. A detached ADU, and there are different kinds of ADUs, as this body I'm sure is well aware, is defined as an accessory dwelling unit that is separate from, physically detached from, the primary dwelling unit. That's defined within the ordinance. A couple of different limitations or regulations that allow, or I guess inform, what a detached ADU might look like is that it may be allowed only after approval of a conditional use permit. Again, that's why we're here today, is to ask you all to approve a conditional use permit for a detached ADU. That's in the ordinance. Additionally, detached ADUs shall not exceed 25% of the primary structure square footage. Again, we talked about that it should be subordinate, and the ordinance essentially identifies that subordination being 25% of the structure. That's, and we are asking again for a variance of that particular ordinance. Detached ADUs also shall not be located in front of, in other words, that when you come into a property, it shouldn't be sitting there first or in front of the primary residence. And again, that is something we are also asking you all to consider a variance for here today. And again, that is a permissible request on our behalf as the regulation provides, which upon application, this body may grant variances from these regulations, also within the ordinance. Again, we talked a little bit about where the existing residential structure is, and I've gone ahead and put it on the map so we can kind of see it from that perspective. Presently, the applicant, this is Mrs. Jenkins, she resides within an existing barn, highlighted in yellow on the screen there, consisting of approximately, I say 1,500 feet. We'll go ahead and use the PVA amount, 1,600 feet, because that's what we've heard already today. So let's assume 1,600 feet of finished space, which has been renovated for residential purposes. Mr. Fisher talked to you all about those efforts back in 2003. Mrs. Jenkins did not live on the property at that time. She moved in 2013. So we have no knowledge or history of what may or may not have happened in 2003. She has moved into it after, of course, it was finished as a barn, which did have a component that was finished and could be used for residential purposes. And that's, in fact, where she currently lives. Ryan showed you a picture from 2013. This is a picture from much more recently. Basically looks the same. This is the residential side of that barn we were talking about. However, this is the back side of the barn. So again, we're talking about here is that we've got an actual barn that is unfinished and used as you would just expect a traditional barn to be used in that way. And of course, the other side is the part that we're talking about being the finished residential section of it. So again, we've got one big building, a significant portion of which is unfinished, used as a traditional barn. The other section of which is used as a residence where Mrs. Jenkins, again, lives presently. We were looking at it from the perspective of a survey map before, but I wanted to at least put it here on the map for you all to see. The applicant wants to build, and we've already heard about this, they want to do this fairly quickly if possible. They want to build a primary residence on the property, which is the area highlighted in red. The area in yellow is where the barn currently is, where she currently lives, and the red mark is where the anticipated home primary residence would be built, consisting of approximately 2,720 square feet of first floor. That's what we talked about, and then another 2,700 or 2,720 feet in the basement, so that her family can reside on the property as well. And that is a component that we didn't hear before. But the intent here is for her to build a primary residence on the property so that her family, who's here today, can actually move in and live on the property with her. She will continue to live in the barn residence, and her family, including her children and grandchildren, the idea is that they would actually live in the newly created primary residence. So again, they can all live on that plat. Once the home is built, as we talked about, the existing barn residence would be considered a detached ADU on the property. That's what we're asking you all to consider for this. So again, they want to build a residence so that her family can move in, and that the current barn that is already there as a residence would become a detached accessory dwelling unit on the property. And we're asking you all for that purpose. So I want to make sure I explain that as being the rationale behind why they're actually doing this. Let's talk about the variance requests. Consistent with Oldham County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance Section 250040 sub F, again, that's where the board may approve this, is asking the board to grant 2 variances in furtherance of this effort. The first is, again, to permit the proposed detached ADU, i.e. the finished portion of the barn, that 1,600 square feet we were talking about, to exceed 25% of the proposed primary structure's square footage. And there's been some discussion back and forth about 2720 versus doubling that, the basement, if it's going to be finished or not. The intent of the owner and the family is to develop the basement and to finish it out as soon as they possibly can. However, the thing I want to go ahead and ask you all today, for the sake of simplicity, is to ask for a variance, assuming that they don't, because that would be the maximum amount that we could request. As it is, I think for simplicity's sake, I'm going to ask that that would be the consideration. Is let's just assume, for the sake of discussion, that they don't finish it. And so we're talking about that 920 feet variance that Mr. Fisher identified before. The reality of it, of course, for everyone's benefit, is that they will, in fact, finish the basement. But I just don't want to start confusing about whether they are or aren't in the time frame. I think it would be easier to just make the request, assuming that it isn't finished, because that would just be a straightforward request from us. So that would be my pitch to you all this morning. The second variance request would be to permit the proposed attached ADU, again, that barn we're talking about, to be located in front of the proposed primary structure, or that new house that they're wanting to build. Let's get into it a little bit more here. Applicants, talking about the support of the request, we affirmatively state that unlike similar properties that are zoned in this manner, the property associated with this request has no, what you might identify as a traditional primary residence or a single-family home currently on it. Again, it's got that modified barn at the end of the day. A little bit unorthodox in many ways for a lot of us, but that is what is currently there. They don't have a single-family home structure that exists on the property, unlike many other CO2 or Ag 1 properties might have. If denied in this request, we would just go ahead and point out the applicant could not use her property in a manner that would be otherwise permissible for CO1, i.e. build that traditional single-family home that we talked about. That's ultimately what she's wanting to do again. And then depending on how it's viewed, although I've asked you all at this point, we talked about whether it would be 27%, 55%, depending on whether you look at the basement or not. I'm going ahead and asking today that you just assume the basement is not finished, that 920-foot variance, just for the sake of simplicity, with the understanding, of course, that we're all going to be, they are going to finish it at some point. And that ultimately, what we're asking for is still going to comport with that overarching requirement, which is it still is going to be subordinate in scale to the proposed home that they're talking about. It is still going to be smaller than the primary residence that they're proposing to build. Regardless of whether it's include the basement or not, at the end of the day, the barn finished residence will still be smaller and subordinate to that residence, which we believe is still consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. And the proposed attached ADU is located near the front of the property, the contours of which limit the location of any prospective primary residential structure, which I've highlighted for you in red. And we did nothing to create this issue. Again, the barn was built and all these buildings were built before the applicant owned the property, so this is not of her doing in some way. So I did highlight for you just as an idea where theoretically they could do it in front of, if you will. Obviously, there's an entranceway and there's a fairly limited amount of real estate where it could theoretically be in front of the ADU. So again, we're asking for a variance for that simply because there just isn't a whole lot of opportunity or space for them to otherwise build a location that would be in front of the proposed or the barn. That's why we're asking for a variance so that they can actually build it behind the barn. And again, just for everyone's benefit, no harm to the public safety or welfare will occur by virtue of this request. That's also a requirement in the ordinance for us to submit to you all. Those are the variance requests. We also have obviously a conditional use permit request, which is part of the overarching requirement, and then consistent again with 250040E1 of the zoning ordinance, we're asking this body to approve a conditional use permit designating the finished portion of the existing barn, again, the residence in which Mrs. Jenkins currently lives, as an approved detached ADU so that she may live in that barn and then build that separate primary residence on her property for her family so that they can live there. As part of this, we're affirmatively stating, we represent to you all that, again, the property has no traditional residence on it presently. It's, again, a modified barn, multiple barns on the property, one of which, again, has been modified, and that we want to designate the finished portion of that barn, the residence she currently lives in, as a detached ADU so that her son and her family can build a traditional residence on the property and live with her. In doing so, we expect to promote two concepts which we think are important for this purpose. One is to use an existing parcel to increase housing capacity versus finding, for example, an undeveloped space somewhere else and then developing it. So we're talking about doing it within the confines of an existing parcel that's already been somewhat developed. And also to promote closer interaction with the family unit by facilitating, again, multiple generations to live on a single parcel of land. She wants to do this to bring her family closer to her so that they can all live on the same property. That's ultimately the goal here. In further support, just for everyone's benefit, it doesn't run afoul of the comprehensive plan. It actually comports with the comprehensive plan, we would argue, in a number of ways, but I'll highlight two of them for you. The first one is it comports with land use objective LU-1-3 sub 1, and that it promotes development in an area with existing infrastructure. Again, we're talking about a barn that's already there. We're just trying to convert its status, if you will, from a residence to an accessory dwelling unit. And then the second one is comports with land use objective LU-2-3, in that it conserves existing housing stock. It's not going to add any more numbers to. It's not going to, for example, deprive anybody else of a housing opportunity. It's not going to. It's not going to, for example, take any numbers down from individuals who may want to move here. It's essentially comports with and just allows them to build a structure on a property they already own and in which at least somebody already lives. And again, Just to reiterate, we're wanting to designate the existing barn as the detached ADU so that Mrs. Jenkins and her family can build a traditional residence on the property and live together on that property. Other concerns, there are a couple of things that may come up. One of these at least was anticipatory. The other one we've already kind of talked about. One is, again, this body is well aware of short-term rental properties. I'm affirmatively stating to everybody that the owner and her family have no intention whatsoever of converting any approved detached ADU into a short-term rental property. They have no intention of building a primary residence and then turning that barn into an Airbnb for everyone's benefit. In case there is any concern about that in any way, shape, or form, they have no intention of doing that whatsoever. Additionally, as we talked about with the addresses, there is no address available for the proposed primary residence. Mr. Fisher very thoroughly went through the issues in terms of the numbers for the address. The family has signed an affidavit that if this request is approved, they will have the barn be designated as 3723 and a half East Highway 42 until further notice. There are some conditions that the family has no control over. And they're not conditions that are going to be imposed upon anybody else who lives in the area at this point. It's just a condition of time that may occur. But as of now, assuming this body approves it, the primary residence would be 3723 East Highway 42. The barn would be 3723 and a half East Highway 42. And that has been done in conjunction with Oldham County and the planning and zoning staff there. So again, just to summarize for everybody, so Mrs. Jenkins and her family respectfully ask the board to approve the following. 1, a variance permitting the proposed detached ADU, again, that finished portion of the barn, to exceed 25% of the proposed primary structure, i.e. that new single-family home's square footage. And we talk about it, again, being 920 square feet. That's the number. We're going with the biggest number just for the sake of ease here today. A variance permitting the proposed detached ADU to be located in front of the proposed primary structure. Again, we talk about those geographical limitations and why they're asking for that variance as well. And then 3, and finally, a conditional use permit allowing the applicant to designate and utilize the finished portion of that barn in which she currently lives as a detached ADU on her property once that primary structure is built. Those are our requests before you all today. I hope I was able to help illustrate a little bit more what's going on. Again, I know there's a lot of moving pieces. I'm happy to answer any questions. Mr. Delker, the developer, is happy to answer any questions as well. And again, Mr. Chairman, we appreciate your time and the time of this body.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You asked us to, just to assume that the unfinished portion of this project was going to be finished. Is that right?
For the purposes of today,
Yeah, for the purposes of today,
Yes, sir.
that's what you want.
Yes, sir. Because if realistically, if they were going to finish it, the request for a variance would be substantially less in terms of the actual square footage, right? We talked about it being 920 or my calculator is about 260, something to that effect is the difference that we would be talking about if the basement were finished. So what I'm saying is, just for the sake of ease of today, let's just assume that the basement is unfinished. I'm telling you all publicly that the family intends to finish the basement, but we're just, for the sake of ease, saying let's just assume that the basement's unfinished because that is what the current plan is that has been submitted, and we're just going to ask for that, for the largest number, so that we don't have to come back in some way and change the number in any way, shape, or form. We're just going to assume, though, for lack of a term, the worst case scenario in terms of the number, and ask you all to grant a variance on that basis. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah.
The existing barn, the living space is 1,600 square feet of living space. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. That's the case. It's 1,600 square feet. Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's going to be a question for you or maybe staff, I don't know, but this thing was approved in '03 as a barn, and I'm asking about certificate of occupancy and living, but it was permitted as a accessory building horse barn, and then again in '03 there was another one that for some remodeling to include a lounge and office space, but nowhere was there living space. But today we're treating this as an ADU, or maybe even treating it as a primary structure, because I don't know that you can have an ADU without a primary. Maybe you can, I don't know. So in any case, I am in favor of what we're trying to do. I'm just trying to think through logistics and legality here. But if this thing was approved as a horse barn, but now is being used as living space, is there, and I guess it might be more of a question, Ryan, for you. Is there any consideration, and maybe that's where I'm thinking that, should we be thinking about a fourth conditional use permit? Because, I don't know, there's just something that's odd, and you're right, there's a lot of moving pieces, and that's where I'm trying to piece everything together. Is there any other consideration that we need to be thinking about here? Or are we okay that, did this thing ever get a certificate of occupancy?
Not that I found. I showed you all the stuff that I found, and both of those cases are locked, so I can't go any further than just what it shows was done. You all have dealt with cases like this in the past. We had a similar one on 42 closer to 393 that was originally built as large part being barn, and there was a small living portion, and then they wanted to build a house. So they had the barn, which was actually permitted as a single family residence, and they were doing it. It's kind of like we do it backwards, right? And you all have seen several cases like that. This is very similar to that one, is that it was, except the fact that those were permitted as single family residences, even though they were essentially barn dominiums, people call them today. This, we have no evidence that any of that was ever done, but it's also wasn't their property at that point either. So
that's true.
Yeah.
And my concern basically is with it is that maybe we need to have something that said that it cannot be rented out.
Well,
I don't know what the intentions are, but we need to have some safeguards that it cannot be rented out.
Well, and keep in mind, I mean, you could always put that in as a condition of approval that it wouldn't be used as a short-term rental. Right. They could do that based off the fact that they live on that property, but they would have to come back and do a conditional use permit for that short-term rental anyway. So they couldn't just do that by right, no matter if it was in there or not. I mean, currently the way our procedures are set up is any type of short-term rental that's owner-occupied has to come before you all for a conditional use permit. So,
But to address what you were saying, Larry, they didn't own the property when it transferred from a barn with a horse stall to something with a lounge. They purchased the property with that building as a living quarters. I'm sure that's how it was listed, and I'm sure that's how.
well, that's what it said. The PVA lists the property.
It listed
as
the property
living
as that,
quarters.
and I think that's what we need. That establishes the fact that it exists currently today as a structure that is a livable, that is a dwelling.
And for everyone's benefit, I'm informed that they were actually the third owner. Since that point, it has been sold multiple times since then, and she's actually the third. Now, she has lived in that residence for the last 11 years.
Right.
She did move in 2013, but it had been sold multiple times between
I
the
understand
time
what
it
you're
was
saying,
sold.
Larry. But
I guess no, I'm perfectly comfortable if the last bullet here, the PVA lists the property as having living quarters. It includes 1,600 square foot of living space.
I think that covers our
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so board, are there any questions? Just bear in mind the three different things we're asking for here. Two variances and a CUP.
Yeah.
So-
Variances first.
okay. So any questions regarding maximum square footage? Or location?
I'm just, as far as the location, it is in front of the primary is in front of the, I'm sorry, the ADU is in front of the primary as it pertains to the access road, but not as it pertains to the main road. So it's in front of it because it's in front in relation to the access road.
Which is my understanding that's how that is designated
Yeah.
when you talk about in front of. It's
Just
it's
for
the entry
perspective.
point to the property. That's how you visualize what is in front of versus in.
for perspective for our, the way we're looking at the property there, that the main road 42, it's actually the primary would be in front of the accessory, but that doesn't apply because we are going by the position of the property or the structure from the access road.
No, well, I don't think
That's
so.
correct.
Go
No?
back a couple of slides where the proposed, yeah, right there.
So the yellow is the current structure.
Yes, ma'am.
The red
Would be the primary.
would be the primary, and I don't know.
And so you designate what is in front of by where you come in on the property.
you come in on the stri-
So
Yeah,
this would
not
be the
42.
only area that theoretically, and again, you've got a pond, you've got a limited space here. You've got limited space of where you could theoretically put a structure that would be quote unquote in front of based upon the access to that. So this is where they're hoping to build the home. It would be behind
Yeah.
from the access point, but
From
to
the
your
access
point,
point.
yes, it would, depending on another vantage point, it could be in front of, but we talk about where the access point is as being how you look at it in terms of its relation to the ADU.
Understood, thank you.
While you've got the screen up, and actually, if you have, that's the map, do you have a shot of that blown out a little bit larger? That shot right there?
Let's see, I don't know if can we zoom in on this?
That's all right, that's all right. Just leave it right where it is. So it appears to me that all the other properties surrounding this might have something similar to what you're requesting. So let's go directly below us to 3717.
This is right here?
Yep, that one right there. Where's the primary structure on that? Right below where it says 3717, correct?
I can't
That's the
speak
primary
for
structure.
it. I can't obviously speak to, my assumption, if I will, is that this is the structure right here.
Okay. And then on the same drive there, you've got a fairly substantial barn or garage or whatever that might be.
Right here, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
sir?
that's what I'm
Yes,
talking
sir.
about. And then let's go up to, see, it's off of your picture here, but the 3725, again, you've got, you've got a large residence, and then right behind it, looks like a very substantial, maybe the same size as what we're talking about with this property. So you've got a very large accessory building there. And then go below that at 3801, you've got a couple of large, that looks like a large primary with, a very large accessory. So all I'm saying is, or getting at is, the general character of the area. It seems like all these properties, have a, somewhat a substantial or a decent primary with a large accessory building, whether they're, do you happen to know, are any of them ADUs?
I don't know, sir, no. But again, to your point there, that we would submit to you that it is consistent with the general appearance of the area, the general feel and appearance is just the best word, I would argue.
All right.
I want to say one thing, and I meant to say this when I got back up here a second ago. We had numerous conversations with the developer on options to do here. And as you know, they've got 17 acres, so they could split off a parcel and create their own. We talked about that would require them to go to the planning commission to get a waiver of the fourth parcel off of an access easement. But in addition, they would also have to end up at your board for a road frontage variance, as well, or ask that concurrently from the planning commission. But they would have to go there as well. So, upon talking of the different options, their thinking was this was kind of the best ask of to come to one board to try to get all these things settled. So I just wanted to make that point known. I probably didn't, talk about that as much in my presentation as I wanted to, but this isn't something that, this is something we've been talking about for probably a year. So just wanted to.
While you're up here, because I'm getting ready to ask for those in favor or opposition, did you get any phone calls or email or anything?
I got nothing on this.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll make that call here in just a second.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to know, I don't know if you knew, but there are individuals that at least had signed up outside, so there may be individuals who want to speak. I'm not sure. Okay. I do have one last point that as soon as I said that, I forgot. There was a question about the pulling, are we going to be able to pull the building permit, and they're jumping at the gun on to get that done. I did talk to them as well. I talked to the developer. If you all would like to make that a binding element, that within a certain time frame, a building permit is built, so they move quickly to build the primary residence and put that on there to reconcile what we're talking about, they are agreeable to doing that as well.
What time period? Because I would like to put that as a binding element. Next week. So,
Within 30 days?
30 days? Okay.
Are you agreeable with that?
And
Okay.
what was
Within 30 days.
the,
It
what
could
was
be
the,
tomorrow, but yeah.
yeah, tomorrow.
Within 30 days, Mr.
What
Chairman.
was the final number of the variance for the size? So it's 1,600 square foot is the size of the living space, and we're, no,
You said
2,700.
920 is what you said.
What is it?
Make sure we have all our numbers. I'm just including whatever the max number is.
Yes, that's 920.
All right, so 920 is the variance, well, actually, it's
I'm at that.
925.
Is that right? Or is it 1120? 2720 is the total foot.
So it would allow. So what we're discussing here is numbers.
Yeah, right. I got 925. 2,700,
So 2720 is the
25%?
square footage.
2720.
2720.
Okay, and then 25% of that.
25% of that would allow them to have a 680 square foot ADU area.
Okay, so 920.
Thanks, Ryan. We'll get there eventually.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No, I think we have covered it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
All right, is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Come forward. Let's get you sworn in and state your name and address, please.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And name and address?
Elizabeth Bijou, 3725 East Highway 42 in Pendleton, Kentucky.
All right, Elizabeth, and tell us your opposition.
I am in opposition in my address being in any way, form, or manner in this court. I'm at a total surprise of what transpired here today. In the past, Donna Jenkins called me and said her and her son wanted to build this house if I could give them my address. Well, I have lived here for 24 years. All my friends, legal papers, everything have my address. I said, absolutely not. Then, some weeks ago, Donna called me up again and said, my son and I would like to talk to you. It has nothing to do with you. So they came over, I sat them down in my kitchen, and then it came out that they want me to change my address if and when I sell my house. I said, no, absolutely not. I don't want my address to use in any way, form, or manner. So after trying to pressure me for almost an hour, I said, this discussion is closed, please leave. And at that point, her son said that he wanted me to definitely sign a paper saying that I would change my address when and if I sell my house. I said, absolutely not. Then he pressured me, well, I might take you to court. And I said, well, then I'll get a lawyer. So I said, that's it. I don't want to be pressured, please leave. And they did. Then, in turn, I went to the Pendleton Post Office because I know in various states they have an A and a B in this problem. So I went to the Pendleton Post Office and I said, listen, if my neighbor's son builds a house on her property, can she be 3723 and he be 3723A? They said, seems logical. We do it for other people in the county. So I said, okay, and I didn't pursue it any further. Now I came to court today, and here, to my surprise, guess what? When I sell my house, it's supposed to be $37.25. Absolutely not. I do not want to be hung up selling my house if and when, and try to find some address for my house at that point. So that could deter a sale of my house in the future. I'm just thinking in the future. I'm not in opposition of what they want to do, but I don't see why my address has to be used when they can have an A and a B.
Okay.
I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Were you also wishing to speak in opposition? And you also, sir?
Not opposition, really, but just the questions.
Well, let's come forward. Let's get you sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And bring
Thank
the
you.
mic down. Yeah.
I'm short.
Yeah.
Sorry. I live at 3717, and I was a general contractor.
Let's get your name.
Rebecca Armstrong. My husband Jim is with me.
All right, Rebecca.
And I was a general contractor when I built the house back in 2003. I built it simultaneously that the barn was built. And the previous owner, which makes my heart race when I talk about her because she was evil. We ended up going to court with her because of all the, I'm not going to tell you all the things she did, but it was Stephen King stuff. Anyway, thank goodness she's gone. So we were relieved when Donna and her husband purchased the property. We have no opposition against the building being built. But what I have a question about is the occupancy permit. I went through every kind of loop you can think of to build my house. And my house is a 4,500 square foot home, finished. And I had to go through all kinds of things to get it approved and inspected. And there I had to get an occupancy permit, just like every builder. But the barn didn't seem to have an occupancy permit, didn't have inspections followed up. And I want to know why Oldham County didn't follow through with that at the time. Doesn't have anything to do with the Jenkins, but it's kind of a shame that they could sell a piece of property without even an occupancy permit.
Okay. Those would
So-
be questions for the zoning board or planning and zoning over here.
Yeah, I just, I can't understand it. I paid a lot of money to get what I have, so.
Okay.
Also, I have a question. The road variance coming in, and this is just for their purpose more than anything else, because I don't have a problem.
Let's speak to the
We're all
board.
friends. We try to be peaceful back there, especially after the bad neighbor we had. But I wanted to know where the road will go in behind her existing barn and go to the house that they're proposing,
Okay. Well,
the driveway.
we have not talked about anything dealing with the driveway or the access easement.
Okay. I just was curious more than anything else. But that's all. I just really am curious as to how somebody can occupy a building and not have a occupancy permit.
Okay. All right.
But-
Well, again, that'd be a question for these guys.
Okay.
But I do think, and we'll bring them up here in a minute, I think getting an ADU will require the permitting, so we'll clean, that will be
Yeah,
cleaned
and
up.
I'm not trying to cause problems, trust me.
You're just trying to understand how
I've
it
had
happened.
enough problems.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, anybody else wishing to speak in opposition to the application? All right. Before we go to rebuttal and final statements, let me get Ryan or Jim, either one of you guys up here, please. You heard a couple of issues with opposition. If you want to speak to the opposition as it pertains to the department.
Which question?
Well, I would like to, so let's talk about the certificate of occupancy, if we can address that one first.
Ryan explained in his staff report that our old software that we used for permitting and inspections, it collapsed many years ago, so we can't draw any other information from it other than we know there was a permit for the building originally, and then there was a permit issued for the remodel, and then there was at least a rough inspection, but never a final inspection. So as far as the building being able to be final inspected, one of the things we could do is, if the owners are willing, allow our chief building official to go in and look and see if there are any visible code issues. And again, we can't go and, we're not going to have them tear the walls out. We're not going to go do a rough electric or anything like that. I don't know whether that would allow us to be able to issue a certificate of occupancy or not. Again, that's historic, and I'm not really sure there's a complete fix for that other than the possibility of looking at the existing structure.
So what happens if an ADU is approved? What types of permitting
Well,
is
they're
done?
already living in it. It's already a living space. It wouldn't require, if it weren't for this issue of the old information, we wouldn't require anything.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Second question I had was, it just completely escaped me, I know. It's out there. No.
Well, the driveway's a question of the applicant. You'll let them do that in rebuttal. Since I'm up here, let's just answer the thing. I think you're going to go to the issue of the address.
Addresses, thank you. Yes.
Ma'am, I'm really sorry that it's stressing you out over this address issue. So I'm going to broaden this a little bit.
Well, let me first ask, does this board here have anything at all to do with addressing?
Well, you have somebody that has raised a concern about addressing, and I'd like to answer it.
All right, go ahead.
Calling the post office isn't the answer. Our office, actually, our GIS manager, is the person that issues the addresses, and the post office just accepts those. The difficulty with addressing these days is that we are going to what's called Next Gen 911. And that is going to be statewide, where everything is standardized so that calling emergency services is really standardized. And I'll give you a short example, too. We've had to address the Ohio River, and we've had to actually address I-71. Somebody gets in an accident, they're on a cell phone, it pings in a place, and we've got to be able to say, they don't know whether they're at mile marker 9 or 90. So it's addressed. When we are issuing addresses today, we don't really like issuing half addresses or A or B. And that's, again, for the dispatch of emergency services. So it's a much broader issue than this particular project or this particular application or even a neighbor. We do, and we have corrected addresses. We've had addresses that go backwards. They're rising, and then they drop, and then they rise again. And we've had property owners who we've had to say, you got to change it, again, specifically for dispatch of emergency services. The easiest time to change an address is when there's a change of ownership. For the current owner to have to go and change bank accounts, investments, mail, driver's licenses, whatever else, is a lot of work. But when you're changing an address because you're moving in, it's real easy to just assign a new address. We're not making the current owner change the address. We'd like them, and should the property come for sale, if ever, that's a good opportunity because, again, everything when you move in, and we've all moved at least once, I'm sure, in our lifetime, and know we had to go through that. So that would be the perfect opportunity to make corrections because even on 3725, if that property was ever divided, there's not an address. I said if it was ever divided, there's not an address for that property. So there, if you look at whatever, I can't really see, it's 3,000 something, I guess, one. We're just trying, or 3801, we're trying to make additional space, understanding that it's possible that somebody in the future might want to change or add. Again, it's all ifs. So again, this isn't created by the owner of either one of these properties. It's just something that we're trying to correct. We are okay with issuing a half address temporarily. But when we go again to this Next Gen 911, the system doesn't really like that.
So when I was hearing the initial presentation, I was under the impression that it was going to go to the half address
Yes.
for today's purposes.
Uh-huh.
And then if the adjoining property ever did sell,
If,
on the transfer of property, it would change, not prior to the transfer of property.
that's correct. And I hope,
So-
and I hope you understand that. Nobody's asking you to do it.
I understand what you're saying. However, if I sell my house and it's not 3725 anymore, when I have a client to buy my house, what address do I have?
So,
It-
so Jim, guys, I'm completely uncomfortable. The subject of this application is this particular property. Her property, whatever it is, 3725,
Right.
it's completely irrelevant as it pertains to what we're talking about here. Addressing, I don't think is in our regulation of Board of Adjustments to do anything at all with addressing. Certainly, I'm not worried about that property and that property and that property and that property. The property that we're talking about today is 3723, and I'm not going to make a condition that some other neighbor down the street here has to do something, as a condition of approval, or even talk about. General character comes into play. Certain other things come into play when I'm looking at the neighboring properties. But I'm not going to make a condition of approval or anything else pertaining to another property owner as it pertains.
No, you're not putting it on the adjoining property owner. You're putting it on an if-then scenario only. If the property is sold, then we
a
have
neighboring property?
we have the authority. Our GIS manager, as the addressing agent for the county, has the authority to require an address change. We're not asking them to do that.
Yeah.
We're asking them to do that at a convenient time, and it really will have no implication whatsoever.
But that's not before this board here.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's an administrative
But
thing.
it is on the current application to change the address back when we assign them a different address should a number
I can
become
I can
available.
say if another address, again, I'm talking about the subject property
That's
here.
what I'm talking about as
Yeah.
well.
So
We're
if-
asking, Larry, we're asking the applicant
Yes.
to use a half address. But in the future, if a number is available, they will be required to get rid of the half address when we
That's fine.
assign a new one.
That's fine.
That's all we're asking.
That's right.
If. It's an if-then scenario
For the subject
for
property.
the subject property only. If an address never comes available, they don't have to. If
right.
it does, we're going to require them to get rid of the half
Yeah,
address.
no, totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a change to the neighboring property would happen after the property is sold, not while the current owner owns that property.
That's correct.
But
We're
that
not
has-
asking-
that has
It
nothing to do.
with us,
It
just
has-
for clarity.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah. It has no implication on the current owner or the address of 3725.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay?
You'll have a chance here in a minute, ma'am. All right, board, we are, you'll have a chance in just a second. We're at a time of rebuttal. Board, do you all have any other questions before I go into rebuttal and final statements? And final questions? All good? Okay, we have 5 minutes for a rebuttal, and if we're going to start with the applicant. Ma'am, you'll have a chance here in just a second after the applicant.
I'm actually going to ask Mr. Delker to come up and talk real quick about those two matters that came up that he actually can speak to in terms of driveway just for information purposes, and then any discussion. Again, the applicant, for the record, is agreeable to the 3723 and a half, and they understand that if the address changes at some point, they bear the burden of changing all of their stuff in the future. They're fully aware of that, and they fully accept that. So just want to make sure that's in the
All right,
record.
very good, thank you.
Billy Delker, 4751 Fox Run Road, Buckner, Kentucky, 40010. As Mike mentioned, I am working for the family on this project. And to answer the question about the driveway, so they will come in right around this first barn right here.
Hang on, we don't have, Jay, can you put our, thank you. He did.
I did.
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, we got the map now.
All right, so right where the pointer is now, the driveway will kind of drop in right in this area and come right around the corner of her fence and then swing out this way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
So right here, it will follow to this point right here, kind of between the barn, this first barn, and then the barn that has the residences in it. The connection point will drop in right here and come right along the back edge of where that kind of property or the trees and so far are, the fence, and then kind of follow right out here to the.
Wouldn't go behind the barn where the existing road is?
Back here,
No, in between.
it's going to come up right.
See what that little.
It's going to come up right here and then kind of drop in right between this yellow circle.
So it wouldn't go behind where she pulls in.
No.
To her driveway.
No, it's going to drop in right here and then come right there. So, and then in an attempt not to confuse things more on the square footage, I know we're asking for kind of that main square footage or the maximum variance. The way the plans are now, and I know it's hard to tell, us builders make things confusing sometimes, but we are already finishing a certain percentage of the basement as it stands for them, but we're also going ahead and fully framing the basement, fully doing the having the air conditioning or the heating and air system prepared for it. Their intent is to finish it right away. In fact, they've asked me to have some discussions, assuming we get this approved today, about the possibility of us going ahead and finishing it. So I can tell you with confidence the basement will get finished in very short order.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other rebuttal? Yes, ma'am. You'll have time for your rebuttal.
You had just mentioned that this board has nothing to do with addresses, correct? Yes? No?
This board has, that's correct. This board has nothing to do with
So
assigning the
therefore,
addresses.
the fact that my address is even in this discussion should not be, and I appreciate it if that whole discussion about using my address for now or for the future be exhumed from the record.
Well, I can tell you that your address, as it pertains to the subject property, is irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Thank you. And as far as this gentleman that feels like pressuring me when I sell,
Ma'am, speak
that
to
I
the
have
board.
to let him know when I sell to change my address is not conducive to what my thinking. So this gentleman's whole discussion about my address should be exhumed from this record as well.
No, ma'am. What's been on record and the testimony is already given, and that is part of the record.
Well, let me ask you, or this gentleman, I go to sell my house, and I have a client that wants to buy my house.
Ma'am, speak to the board.
And a client wants to buy my house. And they say, what is your address? I don't know because I haven't heard.
Okay,
That's not correct. That's not right.
Your property and your address has nothing to do with the subject property, with this application before us. What they are proposing to do, and if approved, what will be in the condition of approval is they will have an address of a half, whatever that is,
3723 and
3723 and a half.
3723A, right?
Should another address come available, then a condition of approval will be set. You will need to re-address these guys. This address, 3723, will need to take that 3723 and a half and adjust that to the new address. Should a new address come available, they will need to readdress the 37 and a half.
So it's
your
not-
property and your address is irrelevant to this case.
Okay.
Should another address become available, they will need to readdress the half.
Well,
Now,
they're
if-
making me understand that when I sell my house, they will automatically
Well, that's
get my
irrelevant.
address.
Whatever happens beyond this court is irrelevant. What we have, and if approved, a condition will be set. Should an address come available, they will need to readdress that half.
Well, the problem with the post office and what they're telling me is that all the odd numbers have to be on one side. So if they want once I sell, they automatically want my address, which is not conducive to my way of
Okay,
thinking.
all right, well, that's, you at that time, I mean, if you want to go to court at that time, or whatever happens at that time, if you sell,
Mm-hmm.
and if there's pressure for you to change your address, I don't know. That has absolutely nothing to do with this case before us today. I have no
Okay,
clue.
so
if
it's
you-
not
if
an
somebody's
automatic
pressuring
thing.
you 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now to change your address, I have no clue. That is not what's before this case. If at that time somebody's if you want to take them to court, take them to court. Has nothing to
Okay.
do with this case. What's before this case, should an address become available, they will need to reconsider or readdress that half.
So to reiterate, it definitely does not have to be my
I'm not
address.
mentioning 3725. I'm not mentioning that address
Okay,
in anything we do. I'm saying, should an address become available in the future, they need to address the half.
but you're also saying it definitely does not have to automatically be mine.
I'm not saying that. No, ma'am.
Okay, I understand now. And I hope this gentleman understands what you're saying as well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Tate, do you have anything to say?
I have a lot to say, but I'm not going to say it.
All right, final statements, opposition, let's start with opposition. Do you have any final statement, any additional statements? Elizabeth, any final statements?
No, as long as I'm left alone.
All right, final statements for the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm going to be brief again. Just thank you all for your time. I know that we've gone through a lot of information, again, a lot of moving parts. I appreciate your indulgence, your patience, listening through. Very good questions on the part of this board, and in addition to those out here or watching us as well. Again, what we're asking for ultimately is to allow Mrs. Jenkins to build a primary residence on her property and then convert the existing residence in which she lives, which is a half-modified barn, into a detached accessory dwelling unit. And then, of course, the two variances that I talked about with regard to space and with regard to its location to the proposed single-family home as well. Again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your consideration of this request. And, Mr. Chairman, with that, I will yield back whatever time I might have left. Thank you very much.
All right. Board members, questions for anybody? Mark, you good?
Good.
All right, I'm going to close the floor, open it up for discussion.
I think all the questions have been answered, and we have a pretty clear view on everything. I do have one thing. We were talking about amending conditions of approval on pretty much each of the motions. One being that the ADU will not be used for commercial purposes. Is everybody good on adding that to the conditions of approval?
Yes.
Okay. The other would be that a building permit will be applied for and obtained within 30 days of approval. Is that also something that, okay.
Yes.
And I don't think there's any others. I think that was it, because we decided not to talk about the address and the conditions of approval, which I agree with.
Gretchen, you good on the wording for the addressing?
Yes, because it only applies to the property that we are talking about today, obtaining the 1/2. We're not going to address any future sale of any other property adjacent or not adjacent, but in the area. So that's something that is not before us today.
All right, any other comments? Tate, do you have any comments for the board? We've closed the floor, open it up for general discussion.
No, I think you covered everything, and I'm ready for the motions to be made.
All right. And I guess we'll start with, which one do,
First variance would be fine.
you want to do variances first, location, max square foot?
Yeah, I mean, you've got them listed 1, 2,
Yeah.
and 3 there.
Yeah, let's do those.
Well, the conditional use permit is 1. Should we start with 1 and then just do
Yeah,
2?
that's-
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, I'm ready
All
for a
right,
motion.
motion to approve OC 24-043 for the conditional use for a detached accessory dwelling unit located at 3723 East Highway 42 in Pendleton. The character and objective of the proposed use and the potential impact on the community and its surroundings are appropriate, and the proposed use is compatible with surrounding land uses and the general character of the area. The conditions of approval are as followed. The conditional use permit shall only apply to the plan considered at the August 15th, 2024 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing. The applicant must sign and agree to the acknowledgement and commitment of addressing and shall apply for an address changed for the ADU while sale or transfer of the adjoining property located. We're not going to even say
That's
that.
right.
I'm going
No,
to stop
no.
there. The second conditional approval is that the applicant must sign and agree to the acknowledgement and commitment of addressing
Should a new address become available?
should a new address become available. That's fine. The third condition is that the ADU will not be used for commercial purposes. And that is the first
Okay.
motion.
All right. Any, do I have a second on that one?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that one's been approved.
Okay. Motion to approve OC 24-043 for a location variance at the property located at 3723 East Highway 42. This will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, and will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow for an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulation because the proposed structural placement is limited. The proposed structure placement is limited, and its proposed location serves the project. The condition of approval, the location variance shall only apply to the plan considered at the August 15th, 2024 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing. Number 2, a building permit will be applied for and obtained within 30 days of this approval. And that is the motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charles. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that one's been approved.
Motion to approve OC 24-043 for a maximum square footage variance in the existing modified barn on the property located at 3723 East Highway 42. This will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, and will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, and will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public. And it will not allow for an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulation because the existing structure square footage is already present, and it would not be reasonable to change it or limit the proposed structure to increase to the extent that it complies with the ordinance. The condition of approval for the maximum square footage variance. The maximum square footage variance shall only apply to the plan considered at the August 15th, 2024 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mark, thank you. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? All three have been approved. Do we need a break or keep going?
Keep going.
Keep going.
All right.
Keep going. Right on.
All right, Gretchen, if you want to read the next one, please.
OC 24-044, an application has been filed requesting a conditional use for a manufactured home on property located at 2317 Dawkins Road, LaGrange. The property is zoned R2 residential district.
Wait.
Okay.
Is that the right one? I thought the third one was Ridge Road.
Oh, you know what? You're
It
right.
is.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. We have two that are similar. I'll start over. I'm sorry. OC 24-044. An application has been filed requesting a conditional use for a manufactured home on property located at 2317 Ridge Road, Pendleton. The property is zoned CO 1 Conservation District.
Okay. Whew, that's better.
My apologies.
Ryan Fisher, Senior Planner with Oldham County Planning. So this is for a conditional use permit for a manufactured home on that property at 2317 Ridge Road in Pendleton. Property is owned CO1 conservation and sits on 10.33 acres of property. No site history to note on this property. Case history, as with our other cases, we posted to our website on July 31st. We sent out our adjoining property owner notices on the 2nd of August, and it appeared in the Oldham Era on the 8th of August. Here's the property in question on 2317 Ridge Road. Property zoned CO1 conservation, and then I did just provide a topography map on here showing the contours, just showing the property is going to be, the manufactured home will be placed down here on the lower end of the property, and as you can see, because there's quite some elevation differences on the property. So just wanted to note that, you know, the manufactured home is going to be placed down in the lower end of the property. So the applicant's requesting a conditional use permit to allow a 3-bedroom, 2-bath manufactured home to be placed on that property in that CO1 conservation zone district. Here are the plans for the manufactured home, and you have these in your staff packet as well, showing the 3 bedrooms and 2-bath manufactured home they're proposed to obtain. Section 030040 requires those manufactured homes to obtain a conditional use permit by the appropriate Board of Adjustments. And then our Section 260-280 applies to all manufactured homes proposed to be on lots that are located outside of our T manufactured home district zoning area. And then I've included that in your staff packets as well, as there's a list of about 8 regulations that they'll be responsible for ensuring that they maintain as well. Here is a picture of what the manufactured home will look like. And then a few elevation drawings showing its appearance and what it will look like as well. Couple pictures of the property. These were taken by our code enforcement officer. He said he stood out in a rainstorm to take these, so I have to applaud him publicly. So this is looking back at the property from the road. And the applicants can maybe let you know a little bit about this. They had originally put in a building permit for a single-family home, and then have sort of changed some plans a little bit. So I'll let them elaborate on that a little bit. And then here's just a couple views looking down Ridge Road, their address, their mailbox here on the right side of the property, and a few more views of the property. Across the street, so in summary, the applicant's requesting that conditional use permit to allow a manufactured home to be placed on that property at 2317 Ridge Road in Pendleton. The potential conditions of approval for this case shall only apply to the plans considered here today. This August 15th, 2024, Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing. The applicant shall comply with all regulations concerning manufactured homes that are outlined in our Oldham County zoning regulations, section 260-280. And the applicant shall obtain all necessary building permits and inspections from the appropriate agencies prior to occupying the manufactured home. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Go to the picture where you sit across the street. Please. Yeah, so where are you, I know the big fat red arrow, are you standing, is that close to where the proposed home is going, is where you're standing?
I believe that's, I'm going to let you ask the homeowner that, since the code enforcement officer is the one that actually took this photo.
That's right, okay.
But I'm fairly certain. He
Well-
told me where to put the red arrow, so.
Yeah, okay. All right, any other questions for Ryan?
I'll say this, where that address number is just above the arrow,
Yeah.
that is about where that little shed is located. So you can see just to the left of the shed, they've already cleared out some trees. Obviously, the aerial image that's on GIS shows a lot of trees there. So some trees have already been cleared out from that portion. Okay. So if you go back to that, relatively close, more so out to the road though.
All right. Questions for Ryan? Thank you, Ryan.
And I've received no comments on this case, so.
All right, and if we can have the applicant come forward, please. Hello. Hello. Get your, state your name and address and get sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
Josh Kennedy, 2317 Ridge Road. Was there any other information you needed from me? No, that's it.
Are you going to speak?
Mary Kennedy, 2317 Ridge Road.
Okay. And both of you got sworn in?
Yes.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Justify the project.
So yeah, we're easy. We're just asking for a manufactured home on the property there. So.
Okay, short and sweet.
Yeah.
We have signatures in favor if you care to see them.
If you want to go ahead and put it on the, yeah, put it down there. And actually, yeah, but I mean, we can't validate or verify any of that, so let's not.
That's fine.
Okay, questions for the applicants?
No, not really.
Jay, could you go back to the computer, please? And just per my question, are we basically standing close to where you're considering putting the house?
Okay, so that is the end of the driveway is where that photo was taken. I'm looking across the road to our neighbor's house across the street there. The house is actually sitting about 120 foot off the road right there is the plan for it. It kind of sits down the hill a little bit. The lot falls off pretty good right there, so.
So your proposed house, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you
is
can-
about 120 foot off the road.
Yeah, roughly to the front of it is about 120 foot.
Okay. And the house that's across the street is and I'm just talking to the general character of the area, that also is about 100, it's relatively
So
close.
there's a 60-foot build line off the road. I would say that house probably sits at least between 80 and 100 is what I'm thinking, so.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thanks, guys.
All right.
Is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor of the application? Opposed to the application? Board members, questions for anybody? Okay, I'll close the floor, open it up for discussion.
I think the reason this comes before us is because it's manufactured and they just need the stamp of approval for that. And to my thinking, these cases for the manufactured homes, the conditions of approval are the things that are actually the most important. So there's no issue with the building of it and the way I see it.
Okay. Anything else? All right, if not, I'm ready for a motion.
All right. Motion to approve OC 24-044 for a conditional use for a manufactured home on property located at 2317 Ridge Road in Pendleton. The character and objective of the proposed use and the potential impacts on the community and its surroundings are appropriate. The conditions of approval are as follows. The conditional use permit shall only apply to the application considered at the August 15th, 2024 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing. The applicant shall comply with all regulations concerning manufactured homes outlined in the Oldham County zoning regulations, sections 260 through 280. The applicant shall obtain all necessary building permits and inspections from the appropriate agencies before occupying the manufactured home.
Okay, thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Mark, discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Been approved. Yep. On to the last one. Gretchen?
All right. OC 24-045, an application has been filed requesting a conditional use for a manufactured home on property located at 1507 Dawkins Road, LaGrange. The property is zoned R2 Residential District.
Okay, Ryan?
All right, Ryan Fisher, Senior Planner with Oldham County Planning. So once again, this is for a conditional use permit for a manufactured home. This one located on 1507 Dawkins Road in LaGrange. R2 residentially zoned piece of property on 1 acre of land. No site history involved. Same notifications as all the other cases. End of July, we posted to our website, sent out our adjoining property owner notices, and the notice appeared in the Oldham Era as well in early August. So here is the property in question on Dawkins Road. The zoning map showing it being an R2 residentially zoned piece of property. So the applicant's requesting that conditional use permit to allow for a manufactured home to be placed on that property in that R2 residentially zoned piece of land. As with the other cases, the manufactured homes have to obtain a conditional use permit by the appropriate Board of Adjustments. That's why we're here today. And that same section that we had in our last case, 260-280, applies to all manufactured homes that are proposed to be on lots outside of our manufactured home district. And those 8 conditions there that are within that section. So here is a picture of this manufactured home that the applicant is proposing to place on the property. And these are the only pictures I have of this. I don't have any plans or anything. I think this is an existing pre-owned manufactured home. The applicant provided these photos. I believe these were also included in your staff packet, I think. No? Okay. Well, forget it. That was just a joke. So I'll go back through these if you need me to. So here is a picture of where the applicant's proposing to place the trailer. You can see Dawkins Road up there to the top of that photo. There's some tree-lined areas on that property. And the applicant's proposing to place that trailer back in that area, that manufactured home. Here's a picture the applicant provided of the roadway coming back in off of Dawkins Road to go back to the property. You can see the red arrow down there at the bottom. This existing entrance that you're looking at is located right here. Some other pictures of the front of the property. Now, if the locations of some of these, where these pictures were taken, I'll let the applicant provide a little bit of perspective on where they're taking those photos from and exactly where the manufactured home will be placed on this property, kind of going back between their drawing and these photos. I tried to figure out the exact location. More pictures of the property. So the applicant's requesting that conditional use permit for that manufactured home to be placed on that property at 1507 Dawkins Road. Same conditions of approval as our last case, that it shall apply to the application considered here today at this August 15th hearing. Shall comply with all regulations concerning manufactured homes outlined in our zoning regs, section 260-280, and the applicant shall apply for all necessary building permits, inspections from those appropriate agencies before occupying the manufactured home. With that being said, that concludes my presentation. I received no comments on this case as well.
Okay. Any questions for Ryan? Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
If we can have the applicant come forward, please. Hello. And let's get you sworn in and state your name and address.
My name is Charlene McKay. It's 1507 Dawkins Road.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Charlene, if you want to justify your project, tell us what you're trying to do.
Well, how do you move this?
Where do you want to do? What slide? I can.
The one where you had me in the woods. Right there. The trailer is going to go here, and I'm looking at the road there, so you can see nothing but woods. You cannot see the trailer from the road itself. The trailer would be hidden. There's no possible way, unless you come up that driveway, would you see that trailer from the road.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, easy enough. All right, guys, questions? Charlene, can you tell me is that a building in the back there?
That is a greenhouse,
Okay,
and there was an old barn back there, but a tree knocked it, demolished it, and it will be pushed on down. We're getting some excavation to be done to put the trailer in there, and they're going to widen the driveway and do a whole lot of excavation, but I wanted to be approved before I spend any more money on this project. And when they're doing this, they're going to tear down that shed back there as well.
all right. With the mouse, move the mouse around. And
Sorry.
I don't know where they want me to go.
okay, move the mouse around and show me, yeah, there you go. Show me where the greenhouse is.
That's the greenhouse.
Okay.
I own both of these pieces of property.
Okay. To the left of the, what, focus just what's in red. Yep, right where the mouse is. What is that? That, yeah? What's that?
That is an old barn.
Okay. Go down about half, keep going down. All right, stop right there. What's that?
I believe that's an old camper.
Okay. And then go down a little bit more. What's that?
This is not there anymore.
Okay.
This was a trailer. There used to be a trailer on this property, and this was the trailer. That trailer is not there.
Okay.
This is the old RV that's there. That will be removed as well. But the
Okay.
new trailer is going to go right about there where this was.
And
an
that-
old
there's
trailer.
nothing there now?
That is not there now.
Okay. So that you have an RV that's still there that you're removing.
Yes.
The other thing is not there. That's where the trailer is going to go.
This is where the trailer's going
And
to
then
go.
back in the back, you got a barn.
Right.
Okay. And then there's a drive that basically
Yeah,
runs
this
the entire
drive-
property.
Yeah, this drive actually comes in over here and goes through there as well. And it's two driveways. Like I said, I own both pieces of property here, but this is where I want the trailer. There's a house over here, and the greenhouse is over there, but that has nothing to do with this section of
Okay.
property.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Do you own the, is that just what is that, all the cars there
That
behind?
used to be a junkyard, and there's a junkyard in behind me, as you can see.
And all that is still there?
And a lot of this property has been cleaned up. A lot of that stuff is gone. A lot of these vehicles are not there anymore. Like I said, it took years to clean. This looked like that, and years of working. I've owned this property for 11 years, and that's how long it's took to look like it does now.
Yeah.
It's not a shared entrance, it's by itself.
You're asking if that's a shared, is that a shared entrance? Show me where the driveway is again.
There's one here. Then
Yeah.
that's for this property.
Yeah.
And then there's one here.
That's what I thought. Okay,
That's
so
for
you
that
got-
property.
Yeah.
And you can see it runs up through there like that.
Okay. But the other one on the other property also,
Right, it swoops around.
It swoops around
It comes
and-
around in there like that, and it'll swerve up in there.
but
But,
okay, but each
that's-
one has
right,
its
each
own.
one has their own property. Each one has their own electric. Each one has their own water and septic.
Yeah.
Okay.
The junkyard, is it still there?
Yes, sir.
The house, if I'm looking at the subject property, the house to the left, if you can move the mouse to 1515, yep, that,
That's Elizabeth Kirkwood. She's a very nice lady.
still there.
Still there.
This is zoned what? Residential? Weird. Okay. All right, any other questions for Charlene? Okay, thank you, Charlene. You take a seat. And you didn't get any email, phone calls, no nothing. Board, questions for anybody? All right, I'll close the floor, open it up for discussion. Charles, you got anything?
No.
Mark, you good?
Good.
Gretchen, you good?
I'm good.
I'm ready for a motion.
Motion to approve OC 24-045, requesting a conditional use for a manufactured home located at property at 1507 Dawkins Road, LaGrange. The character and objectives of the proposed use and the potential impact on the community and its surroundings are appropriate. The conditions of approval are as follows. The conditional use permit shall only apply to the application considered at the August 15th, 2024 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing. The applicant shall comply with all regulations concerning manufactured homes outlined in the Oldham County zoning regulations sections 260 through 280. The applicant shall obtain all necessary building permits and inspections from the appropriate agencies before occupying the manufactured home.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Been approved. Okay. Minutes. Any adjustments to minutes? Okay, can I get a motion to approve minutes?
I'll move and approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mark. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charles. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Minutes approved. Any other business?
I've got a few announcements. One is, I know I sent this out to you all, but don't forget this training opportunity for you all to be able to get all of your hours in one one swoop there on Tuesday, September 17th. The email address on there, some people have had difficulty with because it's incorrect. So if you want to just send it to me, if you do want to get registered for that. But it's September 17th, starts at 8:45, 9 a.m. really, and runs to 3:30. Great day of programming for you to get your hours that you need every 2 years. So.
Okay, what's the email address? I don't remember getting that.
So I probably sent this to you, but then the email address to return them to is felicia.harper@ky.gov, and that's actually an incorrect email address. So
You want to just give him the paper just so he can jot it down? And
Yeah, so I can.
All right.
So if you want to get that, it'd be a great opportunity. I know most of you all met Anna Barge. She is our new senior planner. Starts today, so we welcome her to the team and look forward to working with her. And then I think most of you all know that this will be Jim Urban's last Board of Adjustments meeting today, as his last day is tomorrow. So I don't know if he has any words he'd like to say to the board, or I'm sure Larry's probably got something nice to say about him. But
Nothing nice. Jim, it has been an absolute pleasure. Very much appreciate working with you over the many, many years and your friendship, and it's been a pleasure. Let's not lose touch and enjoy retirement. You've been great.
And don't forget, tomorrow we're having a little celebration for him up here. If you're available between 1 and 3, we had it later in the day so that he would actually stay his entire last day. So that was our thinking there. So, so come and enjoy some.
I want to know where your tie is. You're not wearing a tie today.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Why not?
And then the last thing, our filing deadline is next Wednesday, but I'm fairly certain we probably already have some cases for this. So September 19th, I believe, is that Thursday. Same place, same time. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Get a motion to adjourn. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Meeting adjourned.